everyone, welcome to a character profile episode. We're talking about Stu Carpenter today. Who? Stu.
You've not forgotten him already, have you? He's only been gone 2 months. You thought we'd forgotten him, but we haven't.
We haven't.
He's just been very busy with other exciting stuff in the last.
This is really rude.
It's all right. We're going to be good about Stu. So yeah, we're here today to talk about Stu Carpenter, played by the lovely Bill Fellows, and he's gone from the street. This may well be the first time you've had cause to think about him. Since the middle of October, but
I don't think Yasmin's given him a second thought.
It was a little bit. It reminded me of a bit of when old what's his face got clonked over the head by Stephen, and I've forgotten his name now. And Daisy was like, he was a bit boring though, wasn't he?
Leo,
yeah, exactly. And then when Stu was doing his grand goodbye to the street, Yasmin had closed the door before he'd even got 5 meters down the pavement.
Now I quite like Stu. I just don't think he had any good. They had one good storyline, but I felt like they didn't go where I was expecting them to with it.
Yeah, this is one of these times where I'd kind of be interested to go back to a few years on the podcast and say, well, what were our first impressions of him? Because I certainly didn't have cause to dislike him or have no hope for him at the beginning. I think we quite liked him.
Yeah, because
he came in as a very jolly chap.
Bill Fellows is a really great actor, really charismatic. I'd
not seen him in anything else, but you can go onto his website and view his reel, his film reel, which I've done for a few of the Carrie actors that they're available there, and he's really good.
He is really good.
He's best known for being in Ted Lasso, which is an Apple TV show, big high budget drama.
It's not a drama.
Isn't it? I thought, is it? It doesn't have a laugh track. It's a drama to me. That's what I'm saying. So he plays a guy called George Cartrick on there, and he's a villain. And it's quite funny seeing him like this in comparison to Stu, who, despite being in prison for 30 years, is actually a really good guy. But he
got a SAG award for that.
Yeah, I know he got awarded. Yeah, so he's and Ted Lasso is played all over the world. So Bill Fellows,
a big show,
is a big name. There's a clip from it, and he's there being very villainous. He's being very sweary, and it's always funny to see Corrie actors swearing on the shows, isn't it? But yeah, he came down from that big pedestal of Apple TV to join us in Coronation Street for 3 years. But yeah, he's had a huge back catalogue. He's one of these. He'll do a little bit in lots of different shows. So name a show and he'll have been in it. From The Bill to Heartbeat to Casualty. Downton he was in, and he's in EastEnders for a little bit. He played a chaplain in 2006. He was in Biker Grove, of course, because we've managed to get 3 minutes into this podcast without doing a terrible northeastern accent. But yeah, he is from Middlesbrough, not Newcastle, as I would have myself believe at sometimes, because I'm sometimes good at judging where accents come from. I got the right region at least. But yeah, he was born in Middlesbrough in 1957, went to Guildford Drama School in the 80s, and he first appeared on TV way back in 1982 in a teen drama series called Scene. So he's been on TV as long as we've been alive. So he is, like you say, a big name in the acting world, and I think it was a bit of a coup to get him in Coronation Street, or at least a lot of people were like, "Oh, Bill Fellows," when he first joined.
I don't think they did very well using his talents, to be honest.
No,
with you.
No, and the other things on the show reel that you can watch online. There's one where he's doing a very, very convincing American accent in a big US drama.
What was that?
I can't remember.
You probably don't recognise the name, so you don't think it's important. But I bet it's something like Succession or something.
He's clearly from Coronation Street as well. But these other shows on his film reel show that he is quite a talent as an actor, and I don't feel that, sadly, Coronation Street gave him the right role to take advantage of those talents.
No, it wasn't reflected
But I hate it when we kind of start off on a bit of a negative bent. Like you said, we really did like Stu when he first came into it.
Yeah, but we're not being negative about Bill Fellows. We're being negative about
It's just the character in general and the fact that he felt a little directionless. But we'll cover all of that in the profile today. Let's run down his vital statistics first. Stu Carpenter was born on the 10th of June 1955, so he's 2 years older than Bill. He married Lucy Woodrow and has a kid, Bridget Woodrow. It's quite interesting that Wood and Carpenter...
Amazing.
Is that a coincidence? I think not. Is that laziness from character writing creators? Maybe. First appearance on Coronation Street, 6th of October 2021, before bowing out on the 14th of October 2024 after 255 episodes. So Gemma's just having a scroll down his IMDb page now.
What he's in that's American?
Well, it's probably up on the screen if you look at the screen. You don't need to look
up at the screen.
No, if you look at his screen reel thingy.
I know, I want to. How do I find it?
I don't remember. I think it was on billfellows.com. I think he's got his own website, and that's the mark of a great actor.
He was also in The Witcher 3.
Yes, he did. He did do voiceover work in
Johnny Connor.
Well, Richard Hawley. Was he in The Witcher 3, was he?
Yeah, he was. He had it wasn't a big role, but he had a sort of there was a bit where he had to do a quest and he was a prominent character.
Okay, it didn't seem like Bill had done a whole lot of voiceover work. It was mostly TV as far as I could tell. Obviously a lot of short films as well. He'd done a bit of stage work. Blood Brothers, for example, he was in. But yeah, he settled down on the cast of Coronation Street in 2021. However, and I always love these little tidbits, this wasn't the first role that Bill had auditioned for on Coronation Street. He actually, back in 2019, went for the role of Nina's dad, Richard Lucas, who he was on the show for 3 weeks maybe before he died. So it was quite lucky for Bill, I suppose, that he didn't get that role and was able to stay in Weatherfield for 3 years. I really, really loved Richard Lucas for what little time we saw of him on screen, and he was supposed to be a likeable character just to make it more tragic that he was soon to be passing on. But I think that
a bit like Shelley.
I think a bit like Shelley, a bit less wisecracky.
Bit like Ramsay too, because
Ramsay Clegg,
he's a long lost brother who died.
Yeah, maybe that's something to watch out for. If somebody comes onto Coronation Street and they're just overly nice and likeable, watch out, you could be dead within the month.
Haley died. Took her a while.
Took her a while to get there. Yeah. So anyway, so that was him. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about lovely Stu and what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and it feels almost Christmassy because he is a little bit beard. He is a little bit Father Christmas like, isn't it? So I think it's very appropriate that early December we're chatting about him. So let's run down what happened in his life, starting up. I mean, there's a lot of backstory that got filled in as the character went on.
I think he's got like the best filled in backstory of recent
times. He's got quite a good one. I mean, a lot of the older characters have got really dense backstories, haven't they? Darren Little went back and sort of pieced together everything that some of the early characters got up to, but Stu's past was a bit of a mystery. But basically he grows up in the northeast of England somewhere. He becomes a chef in the Navy, and after that he settled in Manchester, married Lucy, who gave birth to their daughter Bridget. But you say he's a nice guy. He was a bit of a player, wasn't he? In 1988, he had an affair with a waitress at his restaurant, Charlie Walter, a teenage waitress. So,
it was acceptable at the time.
Well, I mean, she might have been. Well, I would hope that she was, 18-year-old at least, well, but certainly a little older than he was, and Lucy.
That she was 18 at least.
Yes,
is what I've assumed. Otherwise, I wouldn't find it.
I'm sure they would have said on the show at the time. But anyway,
but don't forget, age consent 16 in this country.
I know. Anyway, so the story goes that one day Bridget, the daughter, goes to the restaurant with a lovely clay model of a dog that she's made at school.
Why not an ashtray?
Why would it?
It was make an ashtray.
Back in the 80s, that was probably the standard DT project, wasn't it? Yeah. But no, clay model of a dog, wants to go and show it to Dad. What he finds is Stu and Charlie getting it on together.
No, she finds this. You said he.
She finds it. Stu and Charlie getting it on. So she follows Charlie after this, hits her with the clay model. I think it's at a bus stop where we were told. And it kind of kills her because that was a well-fired clay dog.
Yeah, so the daughter kills the daughter
kills the mistress, exactly.
I wouldn't
Well, why?
Call her a mistress.
Why not? He was having an affair with her when he was married. I feel like
there's a bit of it implies a bit more. What's the word? Agency. Than she actually probably did have, because she, she's
so what you're saying is Stu was a predator.
It doesn't seem good, does it? I'm not going to defend this.
I know. Well, he had a lot of time in prison to think about what he'd done wrong.
A really weird choice to make for a character they wanted you to like. Shagged a teenage girl and my daughter killed her. Okay.
So Lucy, the mum, Stu's wife, helps Bridget to bury the body and then frames Stu, because she wasn't a very nice piece of work either, by saying, oh yeah, he didn't come home that night. So Stu gets hauled into the police station. None of this we've seen, of course, by the way. This is all told to us afterwards. I kind of be semi-interested. The moment's gone, probably. Hasn't it? But maybe if Stu had gone on to be a massive character, they could have done one of these big spin-off drama series of the history of Stu. But anyway, long, grueling interview session. Stu eventually cracks and confesses to the murder. So he had this hard detective.
90s, maybe.
What was 90s?
It was probably I'm trying to work out when this crime happened.
1988. Well, 1988 was when the affair happened. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, he has this hard police guy who was not going to take no as an answer. He put him in this interview for hours and hours and hours, all day, until he was, he had nothing left in him. So he just had to confess because he wanted to get out of there. Got sent to prison, where he spent the next 27 years, which is kind of a sucky thing to happen to you if you haven't actually done anything wrong. If you don't count having an affair with a teenage waitress wrong.
I'm surprised he got 27 years. I didn't think you got very much time these days for killing people.
No?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
27 years does seem quite a long time.
Well, it's a long time if you didn't do it. It's not a long time if you did do it.
Yeah, well, he got compensation afterwards. He got a massive payout, 30 years later. But anyway, after his release, he gets a job.
Right, so just to be clear, he was released after serving his time for the crime that everyone said he did. He didn't get released early. He didn't. Nobody knew that he didn't do it at this point. He just gets normally released.
He knew. He was probably saying, I didn't do it.
It's a weird amount of time, isn't it?
Well, he might have been...
Do you reckon he got 30 years and they let him out early for being so jovial and cute looking?
Could have been.
Like, you're such a cute old man. Why are you in prison?
Gets a job in a pub kitchen, but then loses it during COVID. How topical. COVID. And eventually, and this is when we first met him, he was homeless. He was down and out. He had a cough. And this was his introduction to Coronation Street. I always wondered, we were discussing this for ages when it first happened, what's going on with this cough? Is he just a friendly old gent who's going to come in here, save the day for Kelly Nealon? Because his introduction was all part of the kicking Seb to death story, wasn't it? He saved the day there, and I thought, is he going to come in, save the day, and then die of some horrible tuberculosis or something? But no, he just kind of got over it. But...
maybe he was still in Richard mode.
Yeah, maybe he was. Maybe that was just, yeah. Maybe that's what gave him the job as Stu. They said, I remember somebody came in and auditioned for Richard. He had a really good cough. Yeah. We need that in a new character.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. So, Gemma, do you want to take...
He was like a man version of Tiny Tim from the Muppet Christmas Carol.
He was a little bit, wasn't he?
He's just so adorable, but also sickly, and you're worried about him all the time.
Do you want to take 2021 and run down what he got up to in that autumn?
But just like in the Muppet Christmas Carol, it turned out he was just faking it.
Yeah, he could have got better. Totally fine by the end of it. Yeah. Stu Carpenter, who did not die.
No, he just went to Germany.
Right. So go on. What's his big story at the beginning? That's a reminder.
So villainous Corey Brent dumps a bag with his blood-splattered clothes in the canal, and he sees this and sort of fishes it out.
Yeah, I think that this happened before.
This is like
This is before Stu appeared, because we get flashbacks. We don't
see this happen in real time, because we only first see him when he's shoplifting the corner shop, right?
Yeah.
And he gets caught by Asher, or he gets seen, and he's got this bag, and she recognises this is Corey's bag. So she and Nina try to track him down, and once Stu realises this is quite important, he tries to sell the bag back to Corey.
Yeah, this was the bag that contained all of Corey's bloodied clothes, wasn't it?
Evidence.
The evidence from when he was kicking Seb to death.
I don't understand why he's been carrying this bag around for 5 months full of bloody clothes.
No, I don't think it had bloody clothes
no,
in it anymore.
It didn't, but
it was a really nice bag. It was a Wethy County bag, if my memory serves me correctly.
I don't want a fished out Wethy County bag.
Sometimes beggars can't be choosers, and he literally was a beggar.
True. But actually no. If they did put it on eBay, I would buy it.
What if it was on the ITV?
Yeah, Wethy
County bag,
water damaged,
slightly bloodied.
Yeah. Anyway, so Corey's very rude and dismissive of him. So he's like, okay, fine, I'll give it back to the girls. And there's evidence, very important, and it gets Corey arrested and imprisoned.
He was a really nice chap. Do you remember he had his guitar back in those days as well?
He never plays that guitar.
He never plays the guitar. Well, no, he maybe plays that a little bit, but he didn't continue that musical trajectory that he seemed to be on.
Yasmin seems like the kind of woman who, if you were to get your guitar out after dinner, she'd go,
yeah. Yeah, I totally. Okay. Didn't he, when he was doing his walking off a couple of months ago, didn't he have his guitar on his back? It's like, oh, I just found this underneath the stairs.
I do think she stifled his spirit a bit, don't you? I know that she always accused him of doing it to her, but I think she might have been a bit...
Yasmin is like, okay, Stu, you're saying you're leaving. You remember I said that I lost your guitar. Well, here it is. I was actually just hiding it away inside Jeff's magic box for the last 3 years. Go and play it away from me.
Want to hear Wonderwall ever again? So get out of my house. Right. So, by the end of the month, Kelly, who's out of prison, is also homeless, and Stu is keeping an eye on her, and they have this kind of friendship that they develop. So, because she helps him out later, and he soon gets a job working at Speed Daal.
Stu definitely had a thing. Not in a weird way, but a helpy outy thing for just for teenage scallies who've fallen the wrong side of the tracks.
He saw himself in them, which is weird because he wasn't actually a wrong-un when he was younger.
Well, but Kelly didn't actually kill Seb, did she? And I think that he was like, well, I got him wrongly.
We've had discussions about
I know. He's like, I got wrongfully in prison for 27 years. Here's a girl who's been thrown in prison for doing something she didn't do. I'm going to help her out. And then we had the same with Corey. Mason, just recently. Mason was a bit of a naughty boy in some of the bullying that he got into and the zombie knife possessioning. Yeah, but Stu kind of saw that he wanted to change and turn over a new leaf. So he saw the good in people, which was lovely.
It's like, why does everyone love it when Roy does this, but when I do it, everyone calls me boring?
I know.
It's not fair.
I think they could have done more making of the rivalry between Stu and Roy, because do you remember there was a part, we'll get to it later, where Stu is feeling a bit insecure and he thinks that Yasmin fancies Roy, and they don't go on the quiz team, and Stu's like, oh, I don't know any of the answers, but Roy. So that's just one of the other ways that Roy completely trounces Stu. He's better at waifs, better at rehabilitating scallies.
Well, she helps him out, gets him a job at Speed Daal, and then one day there's a fire, which is a pretty bad fire.
I was quite surprised how early in Stu's story this came, because that was a dreadful fire, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a match.
Poor pyrotechnics.
I don't know. Anyway, it was hilarious.
It literally looked like they had a little burning
bit of paper
in front of the camera.
Oh no, look at all the fire everywhere.
I don't know whether, this was late 2021. I can't remember what the COVID filming restrictions were like at this point, but I mean...
It's nice of them to do a stunt that you can recreate at home. Okay, so this fire was started by the family that Zidane owes money to, and that was also a silly storyline.
Yes.
And everyone thinks Stu did this initially. Yasmin does, and it turns out not to be true, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll offer you a room.
Yeah, it was an arson attack. Zidane, Yasmin's grandson, owed them money, and poor Stu nearly got a bit worse of a cough, but he's fine. He was okay.
He's fine.
It was just a match in front of the camera, so we went and blew it out. I think that's what happened. I don't know.
Right, so they then develop a relationship together. Kind of. It's weird. They have a very slow start to this. It's not really clear. I don't think either of them really know what's going on. Stu keeps reminding Yasmin of Jeff.
Yeah, in the I can't remember what it was that she saw in him, but she was still. I mean, this was less than a year after Jeff died.
Ready.
She wasn't ready to move on romantically. She was
She's on
quite
guard.
rightly exactly on edge, because this cheerful DJ turned into be a bit of a coercive controller, and so she was like, anything that anyone did, or anyone trying to get close to her,
she's
and then
suspicious.
Yeah, and it was difficult for to be a Yasmin fan at the time, because you totally got why she was like this. But also, I remember as a viewer thinking, "Oh, come on, Yasmin, get over it." But it's really bad to think that, isn't it?
Well, this is the trouble about mental health issues and things like PTSD and stuff, is that it can be difficult for other people to relate to you. Even when you understand what the situation is. I don't really know what the solution is, but Yasmin probably should have had a bit of therapy. Maybe I don't know.
I think Stu was. I can't remember too much, but I guess he must have been pretty patient. But then he did want a roof over his head, so sometimes you got to work for that. She
retracts the offer of a room though, but she does give him some trial shifts at the restaurant instead. But I don't know why, because I thought he was already working there.
No, I don't know. So this is how we ended 2021. We had a maybe will they, won't they with Stu and Yasmin. He had a roof over his head. He had a job. Things were looking up for the homeless hobo. And we were left thinking, so what's the story that they've got for him here? Now, Bill Fellows has come out since. I don't know whether he said this during his time on the show, whether it's just been in the post-Corrie interviews. He always said, I only wanted to stay in Coronation Street for 3 years. Did he tell Coronation Street this at the start? I don't know. But it did kind of make me wonder, how long-term was his trajectory in the show? I think, like with a lot of these characters, he was given the intro story to make his mark, and then they decided to keep him on. But it felt like as we were going through 2022, when we had a bit more of his backstory uncovered, which we've kind of already gone through, is about all the murder accusations and the arrest and everything. It felt like this was pretty much planned from the start. But then it felt like his character dropped off a cliff a bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
Once that was out the way, he wasn't left with a whole lot else to do. But if somebody comes in and said, right, I'm staying for 3 years. But did he have a 3-year contract? I suppose that's the other thing. He was probably given a year contract, and then it was extended for a little bit longer.
Who's saying that?
What?
He said 3 years.
He's said, I told you, he said that he said...
But who to, though?
Interviewers.
I know, but the thing is, though, this is what happens in interviews. Somebody will have, they'll be like, I generally would like to do a job for about 3 years, and then it turns into Bill Fellows only wanted to be there for 3 years. Maybe he did have a chat, but equally, I'm sure if they had found some amazing, great way to integrate his character and they gave him a load of money, he would be like, well, I said 3 years and I'm going.
I don't know. This is the quote. When I first started, it was a 6-month contract, but with options that took me over 3 years. I'm used to playing lots of different characters, and 3 years seemed a long time to play the same character. The 3 years have flown, and this felt like the right time to go. I always knew I would go at the end of 3 years. It's the right time for me and for Stu. But you're right. I do wonder whether, had the character really taken off, would they have convinced him? But looking at his IMDb page, he doesn't stay in the same place for too long.
Well, he's very talented. He doesn't.
Yeah, he's definitely a thesp that likes to dip into various roles.
I think that's the dream for a lot of actors, isn't it? To be able to flit about and do lots of different things, but it's very risky.
Yeah,
because you could end up with nothing.
If this was if he kind of laid this out on a plate to the Corrie bosses at the beginning. In a way, it's a shame that they put him with Yasmin, because it was only ever going to be a little, a holding pen for Yasmin, wasn't it, in terms of relationships? It was never going to be anything long lasting. But
I don't know. I would love to know how they do these, because when they sit down and say, okay, well, we'll give you options for 3 years, they must have to go, Okay, so say he says he wants to go after 1 year, then this will be his ending. If he says he wants to go after 2 years, then this will happen.
Yeah.
And if he says he wants to go after 3 years, this will happen. And if he says he wants to stay another year, then we'll do this. They must have some ideas.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So anyway, 2022 rolls in. Stu gets offered this chef's job at Speed Daal. Trial successful. And Yasmin says that he can lodge with her at number 6.
She's flighty.
Oh, I know. So but this is when she starts to get a little bit more difficult. Not her fault, I can say, but she starts to worry again that he's a bit like Jeff. He does this prank on Tracy once when he substitutes a present of posh wine from Ken to Tracy with cheap plonk. Basically, Tracy he swaps the bottle over, and Tracy ends up giving the cheap plonk to Ken. And then this is because Tracy had insulted him. Who'd have thought that Tracy could do such a thing? But anyway, Tim has to say to Yasmin, no, look, Jeff is much, much worse than this. It was just a jolly jape. He's fine. Please, you seem like you're onto a good thing here.
But the thing is, though, this is how it started. Starts with small things, and then it snowballs.
But definitely it did with Jeff, didn't it? He wasn't, Yeah, we know how bad Jeff got by the end of it, and he started off by swapping people's beans around in the allotment.
This is how insidious it is, though, isn't it? A lot of the behaviour in coercive control is, if it was a one-off, and it escalates too.
Yeah.
This is why it's really difficult, and people who are sort of involved in relationships sometimes they have to be shown how wrong it is for them to. It's terrible.
Yeah. I guess looking back at the Stu and Yasmin relationship, it never really worked, and I think they didn't try and shy away from the fact that it didn't work over the course of the 3 years, did it? And I guess some relationships are just like that. People get together and they've realised that they're not really that suited to each other, and they just agree to an acrimonious breakup at the end.
It's like Coronation Street is a human zoo, right? Run by benevolent aliens who don't really understand human behaviour, and they put Stu and Yasmin in the same exhibit together. And so they're like, oh, are we going out with each other? Well, I don't really want to. Well, yeah, we have to, though, because we live in the same exhibit.
I mean, at least Yasmin got something to do post-Jeff, because that was always the worry, wasn't it? She came in as a character, was very much a side character. They were thrust her into the coercive control storyline in 2019, 2020. She was big news. She was Corrie's, massive name during the pandemic, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, well, what do we do with her now? And rather than just sticking her out of sight, I mean, they did to some extent. They at least had this as a backup, but it just didn't live up to the Jeff story, unfortunately, because it was just a little bit dull. Anyway, Stu and Ken later on in 22 weirdly break into a wholesaler's, because Stu realises he forgot to order food for Speed Daal's Eid celebrations. So this was the little scene that was filmed in the car park in Media City, and they knocked up this frontage of a wholesaler's, which was it's now the safe store place that David went to the other day.
It's Gary's.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't know whether we've actually mentioned that on the podcast before, but yeah, that place is where Gary's furniture store extends into. The back of it is the frontage of that. Fact, fans. So anyway, they get arrested, released without a warning, but Yasmin's like, no, I've had enough of this. Final straw. I've had my suspicions about you, mate. Out, sling your hook. You're out of here. I can't be dealing with this. Alia, lovely Alia, manages to get Yasmin to invite him back, and after hearing about his tragic story about he's estranged from his daughter, Yasmin's like, okay, I'll take pity on you. And also, I thought she'd fallen out with Zidane at this point after the whole standing there and watching Hashim die of a heart attack, and also getting involved in money laundering in in Speed Daal. Sorry, so she reconciles with Zidane. Hooray! This inspires Stu to try and get in touch with his family, who he's not had any real contact with for 30 years now. He's been trying to send letters and presents to them.
Yeah, just to be clear, Stu does not know what Bridget and
Lucy
did.
No, exactly.
He just knows he was wrongly convicted of killing his girlfriend, and he doesn't know who actually did it.
Yeah. So he goes and finds Bridget because he sends a present to her. The address that it gets forwarded back to him, and then. But the person who lives at her old address gives them the new address. So he goes over there. Bridget does not. Yeah, Bridget don't want anything to do with him. Now she obviously knows that she was the murderer, and
that's the daughter.
The daughter, and her poor old dad was sent down because of something she did. So anyway, meanwhile, Yasmin finally lets down her guard and agrees to have a proper romantic relationship with Stu. For the time being. When Lucy hears about, so this is the wife, when Lucy hears about this food waste initiative that Stu is spearheading, she turns up at speed dial and says, right, I hear from Bridget that you've been bothering her. Stay the hell away from her. She don't want anything to do with you, and I don't want you to have anything to do with her as well. So again, at this time we were like, what's going on here? I've read a few people commenting about this in the last few days when I was doing my research for this, and people said that they thought that the story dragged on for a bit too long. I don't particularly remember whether that was the case or not, but when I think
intrigued.
I was intrigued. I think it was one of these ones that maybe we were able to pretty much piece together what happened, and maybe they were the ones that were responsible for killing this poor waitress.
But this is where it went wrong though, because we worked it out, I think maybe, but we went, oh, we've worked that out, so there must be more to it. And then we made an extra story on top that never... Yeah. I'm still convinced that's what actually happened.
Well, let's get to the end of it, and then we'll say. So basically, Stu tells Yasmin that
he'd been
in prison for 30 years for murder. Nearly. But he's like, because I don't know whether we even knew right from the beginning that that's what he'd been up to. So he's like, I've been in prison for murder 30 years, but I'm innocent. I didn't do it, man. And then it was this corrupt detective, Lennox, who forced this confession out of him.
You need to ask for a CV.
Well, before you agree to... I mean, he did get this job.
Can you explain this 30-year gap on your CV?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have thought that when she employed him at Speed Daal, maybe that possibly could have been conversation.
Would it have come up on a CRB check?
Quite possibly.
When you get a job, aren't you supposed to fill out a form where it says, have you ever done a crime?
Look, Yasmin don't play by the rules.
No, she's like, look, it's cash in hand. Do you understand?
Still trying to money launder this stuff from her team. Anyway, Yasmin doesn't want to know. Fair play. She'd just been... she'd just been married to this awful psychopath, and now somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was in prison for murder."
Well, this
for 30
is again,
years.
Part of Jeff lied to her as well, and this is lying as far as she's concerned.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
He never mentioned it. This is a massive. Oh, by the way,
when is the right time to bring that up?
This is
first date thing, or maybe see how it goes.
There's a lot of stuff that. You wouldn't really want to bring up immediately, but equally you can't leave it too long.
Yeah. So anyway, Stu is arrested, sent back to jail.
Because she doesn't want him in her house.
Yeah.
That means he gets arrested.
I can't remember why he got arrested in the end. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think it's saying.
Well, he goes to our house without permission to get his watch back, and then he gets sent.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So Zidane starts to wonder though if Stu is really telling the truth, and after a bit of investigation with top detective Alia, they discover
she's now a hotshot detective. This is where it all began.
I know. Well, she's a lawyer, isn't she? But she's interested in all things legal.
So.
They discover that the key interview tape is missing. So this was from this massively protracted interview where Stu is kind of worn down into a mere husk that can only say, "I did it, man." So Yasmin says, "Well, yeah, they were able to." To speak to the old solicitor, exactly, and he's able to convince them and Yasmin that Stu is innocent. So Yasmin says, "Come back to number 6 when you're released from jail. Hooray!"
Well, I wouldn't be in jail for you, really, would I?
Stu then discovers that not only has he got his daughter and his wife still knocking about, but he's also a granddad. Bridget has had this daughter called Eliza, and Lucy says, "Look, if you stop investigating this case, you can see your granddaughter."
Suspicious.
Again, very suspicious. Little bit of bargaining going on here. Unfortunately, although the Nazirs believe in Stu's innocence, quite a few of the neighbours don't. And to make matters worse, there's this dreadful to do at speed dial one evening when one of murdered Charlie's friends releases a box of cockroaches there just to pay him back, I suppose. So they're going through a really rough time. Everyone's turning against them. So Dee Dee, who just shows up around this time,
well, isn't Alia working as Dee Dee's assistant, and she convinces Dee Dee to take on Stu's case?
Yeah, this was one of Dee Dee's first storylines. She'd only been in the show a month or two at this point.
She'd already negotiated contracts with the football club, and now she's busy.
Exactly. Now she's exonerating Stu.
Yeah.
So they find the Lennox. They find the detective, but when Stu goes to visit him, sad times, he's actually got dementia and he can't remember a thing about what happens. That was quite a sad scene.
He can't get any justice from this because what he wanted was for Lennox to kind of admit
to crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he did.
Literally, Lennox hasn't got a clue. So the tape's gone. Lennox's mind is gone. There is no evidence here. Stu is stuffed.
Oh no.
However, Alia appealed to Bridget's good nature, and Stu is at least allowed to see Eliza. So when Lucy, the one I always in my mind, I'm really I can never remember which one's Lucy and which one's Bridget.
Lucy sounds like a younger name to me because
I think that's it.
I think it's because I know somebody who's young called Lucy, and not somebody who's young called Bridget.
And even I totally agree with you. Even though my aunt is called Lucy, and I went to university with somebody called Bridget, in my head, Bridget is a bit more of an older.
I think it's an older-fashioned name, but then we're of the generation where old-fashioned names, everyone's calling their kids.
Yeah, but Lucy goes back. Lucy from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's a relatively classic.
Also, one of Jesus' girlfriends was called Lucy.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't remember reading that, but. So Lucy hears that Stu's seeing his granddaughter. She marches up to speed dial, kicks up a fuss, and this kind of gets Alia thinking. This Lucy has been somewhat suspicious. I think they know more about this case than they're letting on. She's right, of course, because Bridget soon.
She's Alia.
Yeah, Alia.
Always right.
That's one thing you can say about Alia. She's always right.
I mean, the words for always right are in her name.
What?
Some of them. Some of the letters, I mean.
All, at least.
Alia's always right.
Yes, there we go. Bridget breaks down into tears during another meeting with Stu.
She wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes with Lennox, would she?
No, absolutely.
It's a shame they asked Stu and not Bridget. She would have crashed.
Yeah, she would have been singing like a canary after 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, I did it.
Anyway, Stu decides...
but maybe this was also the same thing.
What?
Maybe he did to Bridget what Lennox did to him.
Oh yeah, maybe. Anyway, Stu decides I'm not going to dob my own daughter into the police.
With this.
So Alia and Dee Dee. However, Alia and Dee Dee have already got Lucy's DNA, had it compared to that at a crime scene. Bridget and Lucy, long story short, are banged up. They've been caught, and I think they're still in prison now, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Because
so that's the end of that murder mystery. Stu's conviction's overturned. He's innocent. He says, I'm going to move out of number 6. I'm going to get a big place for me and Eliza. But Yasmin has taken a bit of a shine to him by this point and says, no, you can stay with me. In fact, this is a bit of a turn on, I think. Innocence, you can come into my bed. And Eliza can have the spare room. So all is well at number 6. Stu's right in there with Yasmin. And he's going to have a big lump sum of money coming to him early in 2023. So we were left thinking at this point, there's more to it. And I'm really gutted that we don't get to find out more because, I mean, Bridget, Lucy was always the baddie, wasn't she, in this? The wife, because, she should know better. Of course she was only protecting her daughter, but getting Stu sent down... though he had an affair. She was a woman scorned, wasn't she?
This is why it didn't ever make sense to me, because Bridget's the daughter. So Bridget's the one who killed Charlie. Yeah. But I would have thought that a wife would have been more violent than a daughter. I don't think there are many cases where a child has murdered their parents' affair partner.
I don't know.
Compared to cases where a spouse has done that.
Well, Lucy was always portrayed, the actress that played her she was really hard-faced.
She was really
aggressive,
wasn't
she?
And she seemed like she had more to lose because
Well, she did have something.
Why she was so much more suspicious than Bridget.
Yeah, she did have something to be narked about because she was keeping this secret for her daughter for 30 years. So she must have had that guilt weighing on her, and of course the worry that she might eventually get caught out. But yeah, I just was always convinced that it was her that did it.
This is what I mean. I always thought that Lucy, the mum, killed Charlie, and then, well, Bridget attacked her with this dog, and then Lucy came to help her.
Was it one of those XL bullies?
Yeah, and helped her bury the body.
Yeah.
But I, in my mind, decided that Lucy realised that Charlie wasn't actually dead, and managed to finish her off without Bridget knowing.
I am convinced that must have been an option that was banded around the Corrie writers' room.
Maybe they just thought it was too complicated and unnecessary. But the thing is about it, also, Bridget was a young girl. You know, she was younger than Charlie, and Charlie was a teenage girl. I just don't think teenage girls really are that murderous.
But she was, I don't know, you know, she's had a shock.
On the balance
her
of probability,
loving parents.
It just seems so much more probable. It just seems really, really bizarre that they decided to go with the most they went with the most unlikely option, but then they also didn't really explore that, because you would have thought that there would have been a lot of hand wringing if you were Stu. Like, my God, my daughter, how did I raise this monster?
But I don't think she was. I think it was literally, it was you know, she didn't plot to kill her. I think she went to talk to her, got mad, swung it, and clobbered her.
Yeah, no, she still buried the body and let her dad take the rap for it.
Yeah, but I think that was all Lucy saying, if you want to get out of this, you got to help me. You got to help me bury her. And I think that Lucy was probably. Bridget was young enough to go along with it. She would have been terrified. Her mum was saying, you're going to go into prison. Do you want to spend 30 years, I guess, in prison? She's going to go along with what her mum said. So in many ways, mum was the villain, and Bridget was, you know, she was the one that swung the dog.
Whatever.
In a moment of anger. And kids do lash out sometimes.
All right. Well,
and I think that possibly Bridget might have been willing to confess, and Lucy's like, no way, there's no way that you're taking the rap. We're gonna blame this on your adulterous father. But it would have been so much more satisfying to me, because Bridget, from what we've seen of her, was a really nice woman, and I think she wanted to encourage the relationship between Stu and Eliza. She wasn't so hard-faced as Lucy was, and it would have been much more satisfying if we'd have somehow found out, like you said, that although she'd have swung the dog, if Charlie had still been alive, just barely clinging on, Lucy says, Bridget, go over there, go and fetch me something. Gives a bit of a strangle.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. And then Bridget would have been exonerated. Lucy would have been sent
exonerated.
down.
She would have had to have served some time.
I guess so. She did help cover it up for 30 years. But I would have much preferred that. And I don't know, you know,
it would have been another twist that would have been fun.
Yeah. And yeah, had Stu stayed in the show for longer, they could have gone back to that well. Bill Fellows has said, you know, they've left the door open for me. Maybe I'll come back one of these days. It just feels like a really obvious dangling thread that would have been a satisfying conclusion. But I suppose, you know, had they waited so long to do it, people wouldn't care anymore. Maybe it needed to happen, or maybe they said, well, let's have this one in the bank, and if Stu, you know, takes off and he becomes a popular character, we could always go to it. But in my head canon, it was Lucy Watt done it.
The only reason that we were hanging on to it was because Eliza ends up living with Stu and Yasmin.
Yeah,
and he takes a lot of pride into trying to raise her. He's like super excited because he missed out on so much of having a family life.
And Eliza, when she came
sweet.
into it, was very sweet, very cherubic. She had her guitar as well, didn't she?
She was a bit, you know, wary and scared and upset about what's happened to her mum and her grandma.
She was in no way a kind of nasty teenager. No. She was in no way a kind of a Kevin of a teenager. She was a little bit boring, but she was nice. She was cute. And you're right. I feel that it's a bit sad that her character had to be thrown under the bus a little bit. She was never one of these, oh, we got to keep this one. She's going to go on and be the next huge teen star. But she could have been, and I think I feel bad for the actress who plays her,
not
that
everybody can be the centre stage.
No, I know. I feel bad for her that she had lots of time off of screen, and I think that there's no way that she would have stayed on the show if Stu left. And if Bill Evers wanted to leave, then
for whatever reason, to the extent that she got run over and nobody cares about it.
Yeah, I know. Do you wanna run down 2023 for Stu?
So he's looking after his granddaughter, and he finds out that she's watched one of Max's far right videos.
Oh yeah. I think it was the cockroach crushing one.
Well, maybe she was just inspired by the time that somebody dropped a load of cockroaches.
Oh yeah.
In Speed Daal.
Yeah, where was Max when that happened?
Yeah, well, he should have been stamping them out. So he gets £200,000 for his false imprisonment, and he's thinking he wants to send Eliza to Oak Hill, which is the private school.
Yeah, I think she's getting bullied at Weatherfield High.
Well, she's also watching far right videos.
Yeah, I think she's getting bullied because her mum's in prison. So he's like, well, let's take you out and go to the posh school.
That posh rich people aren't white supremacists.
No.
So of course you've got to send her to that school to protect her from the terrible paws.
No.
But she wants to go to Weatherfield High because she's got a friendship with Sam.
Yeah.
And she makes Hope jealous, which is a terrifying prospect.
I quite liked that. Because this kind of ran through 2023, didn't it? Sam and Hope going out together, and they were a little bit mismatched, but because the two actors were really quite special, and they had a certain je ne sais quoi about them. Having a love triangle between three kids is a little bit unusual, but sadly, the amount of screen time that they were allowed to have didn't really let the storyline run its course. But it led to some quite fun moments, like when Hope was trying to sabotage Eliza's birthday party, wasn't she?
Oh yeah.
It was really great stuff.
Yeah, Hope's a terrifying adversary.
She is.
She's going to be like Tracy when she grows up.
Yeah.
I think. So by the summer, Stu gets very insecure about his relationship with Yasmin.
Oh, this is what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it?
Because Roy, Yasmin seems to be taking a shine to Roy, and Roy's much more intelligent and interesting than he feels.
This was a bit of a love triangle at the other end of the spectrum, wasn't it? Because Evelyn around this time was, making gooey eyes at Roy, and
Roy suddenly had two
women
prospects,
fighting over him,
and he's not gone with either of them still. So Alia says, why don't you take an interest in some of Yasmin's hobbies? So he buys some art lessons, but Yasmin thinks that they're for her and Roy.
Yeah, a little bit
weird. Anyway,
interesting interpretation of that.
So she also thinks that Stu. Well, the thing is though, when somebody buys you like, oh, I've bought you tickets to go to a concert, and there's two of them, and I'll go with you. It's like, well, you've bought yourself a present, and you're involving me in it.
I think there's nothing wrong with that.
I know, but it's not a present though, is it? It's like I've bought us art classes. I've bought you art classes. If I've bought you art classes, you can pick who you go with. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, so she also starts to think that because Stu's getting jealous of her and Roy, she links this to what Jeff used to do to her, and Alia's like, no, Gran, no, that's not what's happening here. Then Stu gets Eliza a tablet, and she uses it to contact her mum to get in touch with her dad, who's called Dom.
Yeah, no, I think the tablet is just so that she could get in touch with her mum, but she also used it. I don't think.
What did I say wrong?
I thought you were kind of implying that that Bridget gave Eliza Dom's contact details, but I think it was just a case
I see. Yeah,
she's got a tablet, she's online, and you will know what
Stu
kids like to do when they get online. It's tracking down their estranged parents.
Definitely in Coronation Street, they do that all the time.
They do. Well, that's what Faye did, isn't it?
Yeah, Bridget's not happy about this, but Stu's like, look, Eliza, it's going to be fine. Little did he know, because Dom turns out to be a massive flake. And Eliza doesn't know this. She's just enamoured with him, and she wants to move in with him because he's much nicer than Stu. He's not strict. He doesn't tell her to do her homework.
Well, I think it's also the age difference, and living with your granddad, and it maybe being seen as a bit uncool.
Stuffy.
Yeah.
And also, like, he lets her watch horror movies and things. So,
but this already felt to me like it was going against Eliza's character a bit, because I don't think that
No, I think
Eliza would
kids are
be the
like
sort
this.
that would like to watch horror movies, and I think that actually
It's not so much the horror movie. It's like being in the presence of an adult who thinks you're grown up enough to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I think that she just had a bit of a personality change. They brought her in, I think quite rightly, as being
Well, she wants
very
to show
sweet.
how grown up she is.
Yeah, and she was starting to grow up a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, Dom says, right, Stu, give me 10 grand, because he finds out about the settlement. It's like, give me 10 grand and I'll go away and I'll never see Eliza again.
I would have maybe tried to plump for more if I'd known that he got £200,000.
Maybe he didn't know about it then. But anyway, Stu's like, no way. So Dom takes Eliza in, because she runs away from number 6. So they're living together. And Stu's like, oh, I've lost her for good. Then Stu hires a private investigator to get some dirt on Dom, because he knows he must be up to no good. But the only thing he can find is that Eliza got a black eye, but it turned out that she got it at Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And so he reports Dom to the social services, and they're like, oh, no. But the investigator does find out that Dom once spent 2 nights in a German prison for a public order offence. Oh, no.
This was, it was... I just didn't gel with this story. I
didn't really care about this.
No, I didn't. I think by this time, we were definitely well into the realms of Stu's a bit dull.
He's perfectly nice.
He's perfectly nice, but a bit dull. And we weren't feeling the chemistry between him and Yasmin.
There was none.
They were very much kind of C tier, D tier characters by this point.
Like I said, they're literally 2 exhibits in the Coronation Street Zoo that really didn't have to be in the same, cage.
Yeah, and then to have these stories, which is Stu, a relative newcomer, Dom, Eliza, it just didn't have the links to the street that made it more interesting enough to cling to, really.
But this is part of the problem that Coronation Street really had in 2023, and a bit of this year too, is that, well, a lot of this year, is that I don't care about any of these new characters and the backstories you're trying to generate with them. Like, oh, this guy's been in it for 2 years and now he's got this extended... And it's silly because sometimes it really works.
Yeah. I think if they'd wanted us to care enough about Eliza, they should have had an awful lot more screen time for her early on in the year. But she was stuck in a cupboard and then brought out when they needed something. So who cares whether she goes and lives with Dom or not? Yes, it makes Stu sad, but by this point...
I'm not bothered about him either.
Yeah.
Right, so the private investigator digs in and finds out that Dom has got a son in Germany, and it seems like he's trying to build his relationship back with him. And so Stu changes his tune and offers Dom £10,000 to go and live in Germany for good. So Dom accepts this, tells Eliza he's got to work in Germany at Christmas, and then tells her a few weeks later he's not coming back. And then Stu feels really guilty about this, and Yasmin finds out and she's appalled, but they both agree to not tell Eliza the real truth.
Yeah, I mean, is this for the best? Dom was kind of pretty... And he was a nasty piece of work. He tried to buy his daughter, didn't he?
He didn't try to buy his daughter. He tried to sell her.
Sell her, sorry. He tried to sell his daughter to Stu.
No, I don't. He's one of these cookie cutter kind of layabout Corrie dads where he was just kind of like not bothered about having a kid. Like it's just an inconvenience.
But what really doesn't stick right with me is the fact that the happy ever after, if you call it, for Eliza is that she's living in Germany with her dad and his new family. But for all of these months at the beginning, he was painted to be the bad guy. And
I think he's more opportunistic, a bit like Cassie, where they're all nice and fine until they can see a chance to get something out of a relationship, and then they'll suddenly turn evil.
So 2024 rolled in, and this was Stu's, not that we knew it at the time, beginning of his final year on the street. Dom makes a brief return to Weatherfield in March, gives back this 10 grand, saying, oh, I was wrong to take it. Eliza's lovely, and I shouldn't have tried to sell her. Here you go, have your money back. Eliza finds out about this and is understandably pretty furious with Stu when she discovers about the deal, and she declares, I want to move to Germany and stay there for good. So
they do fantastic things in Germany with mustard, sausages, and bread.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of an odd. I wonder how many kids would actually say, "Yeah, you know what? I do want to stay. I want to live in Germany." Was she that unhappy in Britain? Because she seemed to have a good thing going with Sam.
I don't know how much she was raised by Dom.
Not at all. So not at all. She was raised estranged. By. Yeah.
I don't know. That's what
I think so. I think so. She was just with Bridget.
But I think, did she go? She hadn't been to Germany, had she at all? She just decided she wanted to go there.
I can't remember.
It's interesting.
I think the first time she went was over Easter.
Of that year.
Yeah.
And she's
like, this is brilliant. I think she's at an international school there, but it's a big move. Because especially, you know, I felt that she was having a nice time with Stu and Yasmin, but I don't know.
Well, she goes there over Easter, like you said.
Yeah. Gets back, says, you know, this is brilliant. I want to stay there for good. She has a little evening picnic with Sam and Hope, jets off with Stu, and that's the end of Eliza.
Stu goes over there with Dom and Eliza
to help her
settle in.
Yeah. And so, bye-bye, Eliza. Sorry. Bill Fellows has decided he wants to quit, so you've got to sling your hook as well, really.
And don't bother trying to learn German, Stu or Eliza.
They all speak English.
If you try to speak German, they'll just ignore you and speak to you in English.
So, with Eliza now gone, Yasmin starts to think, God, knock around the house with Stu now.
Stu here. It was really annoying.
Well, she starts to realise that the only glue that was holding the pair of them together was Eliza.
Yeah, she loves.
Which kind of sucked.
Taking grandchildren and
kind of sucked
them,
for Stu, because I always like to. I've got a bit of romance in my soul when it comes to many Corrie couples.
Oh, do you?
And the fact that she does like there's literally nothing going on between us.
It's just a shame. There was no chemistry at all between those two. They're both charismatic actors. They're both really great. We've met both of them in person.
We only met Bill Fellows?
Yeah, he was at the leaving party.
Oh, okay, I forgot
that. He was nice. Obviously we love Shelley King. She's really lovely. But together as a couple, those two characters. Did you ever see them touch each other? I don't want to see. Look, I don't like watching kissing. You know, you guys know that. I find it a bit cringe, but I don't really need to see them kissing. But you see everyone else having a snog, but you never saw them even touch each other or hug.
It really felt like.
I don't remember. Do you remember that? Like when you think of couples together, you can imagine a scene where they had hugged or kissed, right?
Even Gail and Jessie.
Yeah, I can imagine them having a smack on the lips, but these two, it's like they weren't even brother and sister.
When I picture them, they're just kind of huffing around speed dial.
Yeah.
Carrying, pots of curry out of the kitchen or putting money into the till.
It's like Yasmin was just had like a halfway house for people that are coming out of prison, and she just let Stu live in it.
Yeah. So Stu gets back from Germany.
What did they see in each other? What did they like about each other? Do we know?
Yeah.
Did they ever talk about each other to someone else? Like, did you ever see Stu go, "Oh, Yasmin's wonderful. She's such a great woman"? I don't really remember.
I think that Stu probably liked the fact that Yasmin rescued him or gave him a chance or, helped get him off the streets.
Loyalty to her for that.
And Yasmin...
Yasmin has been an upstanding member of the community. She's been community-minded since the beginning of the show. That's why she founded the community centre, and she's a librarian. Helping people's part of her soul. Yeah. So I think that they both kind of took this relationship and turned it into something a lot deeper than it actually was.
Yeah. And I think maybe there was a little bit of egging on from Alia and Zidane as well.
I just genuinely, can you even see Yasmin writing him a Christmas card? I can't.
No. Anyway, look, he gets back from Germany, gets involved in clearing Roy's name, or tries to, because he just so happens, do you remember this Roscoe guy in prison that was made friends with Roy, but it turns out that he was secretly working for Griff? That was Stu that put Roscoe
that's right.
Roy's way, and we thought there was a bit of a mystery going on there, but there wasn't. Then we have, as this kind of final story, it bookended it nicely, considering that he came in helping out Kelly and Alia and Nina, he ends up taking pity on Mason.
Yeah, so
after he's released from prison.
He'd helped clear Roy's name, and now he wants to help Mason.
So helpful. So he's like, come and have a job in Speed, Daal. Now that, of course, causes a few problems because Mason had been bullying Gary and Sean's
I'd like to
sons.
see him do that.
So they're not happy there. But Stu is absolutely convinced because he only sees the good in people. Mason's changed. He says, look, you come and stay at number 6 even. But one day Stu discovers that Mason's got a crowbar in his bag because he was being coerced by his brothers to join them in a robbery. And he says, look, don't go ahead with it, Mason. It's not worth it. And in retaliation, Logan, one of the brothers, puts a brick through the Nazir's window. This is the last straw for Yasmin. She'd already not really liked the fact that Stu was so convinced that employing Mason at Speed Daal was the best thing to do. And she's like, I've had it. This is the end of the line, Stu. We're now getting bricked. I think we need to call it a day.
Well, they've also only just come out of the whole issue they had where Max became a racist and tried to blow Alia up in a van.
Yeah.
And Alia and Yasmin got rightfully incredibly nervous and upset about the community they were living in, thinking there are people that live there that hate them just because of who they are. And then you've got that happen again. It must have been really triggering, like to have a brick through the window and just bring it all back.
Yeah.
But equally, can people on Coronation Street please get themselves some double glazing?
So that was it for Stu. He put on his hat, he put on his guitar, went down the street. Yasmin didn't even say goodbye to him properly.
No, she
like us, just felt pretty cold about this whole
Fine.
relationship. I'd really, really like Yasmin now to be able to get with somebody that kind of feels a bit of passion for her.
I think she
deserves it. She's had a rotten life. She had horrible Sharif as her husband.
I know, she's never had a good
years.
Relationship.
Not.
She married Sharif. I think that was her first relationship. Or
Yeah, it was.
Her first serious relationship.
Well, I remember when she went out with Jeff, and she was like, "Well, Sharif's the only person that I've ever slept with." So it was a bit of a jump for her to let her guard down.
But then,
there.
if you think about it, I mean, no, Jeff was the worst. I was gonna say they're getting less bad, but they're not.
No.
So she had an adulterer, then she married an abuser,
and then she married somebody really boring.
She didn't marry him.
Oh, get well.
Thank goodness. Yeah. But because she can be so much fun, Yasmin. She's a little firecracker when she wants to be, but she's
had
just
a really rotten life.
Yeah, she really
in terms of relationships.
And her son got blown up.
Let's try and turn this round on Coronation Street. If Gail can be wooed by Jesse coming out of nowhere, there is still hope for Yasmin.
Honestly, I think that if it wasn't for the magician thing, Jesse could have gone with Yasmin.
Yeah,
but probably all the puppets just trigger her.
So anyway, that's the end. That's the end of Stu. He's left. He's gone. He's
went
already
to Germany. No, we haven't said where he went. He went to go
to Germany.
Went to go and live in Germany. Weirdly, with Dom.
Yeah.
Which was such like. It just felt like the right man. Oh, just send him.
It totally did. It was.
Just send him to Germany.
Yeah.
Like, why would he want to live?
Exit. It was like
why would he want to live with Dom?
Yeah. Realising he's not so bad after all.
that he will go anywhere.
I think it was more that he wanted to build this relationship with his granddaughter who was robbed from him in, for the first 10 years of her life. And if that means having to put up with Dom, then so be it.
Well, I mean, the elephant in the room also, every time anyone goes to live in anywhere in mainland Europe, is like you really can't, because of Brexit, you can't just bugger off and go live in another country like we used to be able to. You've got to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Yeah, maybe you'll be forced to come back soon.
I think he did say, I'll be back in 3 months because I can only work there for 3 months.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no indication whatsoever that he's coming back to see Yasmin. I think he'd probably rather bunk up with bloody Lucy at this point, to be honest with you.
That's literally it, isn't it? Bill Fellows has already got a few other projects in the pipeline. I think he's done some filming for Smoggy Queens, which is the comedy show that Alexandra Mardell has been in. But I really do hope that he kind of bounces back and gets lots of good roles. Because like we said at the beginning, he's a really, really solid actor. I just didn't feel this was the right role. And he, is probably his longest role that he ever had.
I think the character was well realised, and he felt like a real person. But he didn't really have anything to do or a very interesting.
No, he had an interesting history. The most interesting thing that happened to him was off screen and happened 30 years before he came into the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think he had that many friends. Maybe some more scenes with Ken or Roy might have been fun. And as soon as this murder mystery storyline was over, he really was just relegated to chefing around in Speed Daal. It's like they ran out of steam. But maybe it is because he said, well, I've only got, you know,
I'll do it for
3 years. And they were, you know, maybe this time last year were thinking, well, let's just keep spinning these wheels. Let's not put him anything into too major because he's going to be gone in a year. I don't know. I do wish Bill Fellows all the best. I'm not going to say that Stu's going down in Corrie history in the slightest, but hey, we'll always have the guitar and the smile and the funny accent. And
I think this. You're so rude.
No, I think it's, you know, it adds a bit of colour to have not just Mancunian or maybe Yorkshire accents in Coronation Street. Sometimes he sits there with Des Barnes, who's also not, you know, from that part of the country.
I liked Stu. I just didn't like his stories and what happened with him and Yasmin.
Yeah.
And I think that Bill Fellows did a great job, and it was likeable despite what Coronation Street threw at the character, which was not really much.
Yeah. I just remember thinking that, you know, when the Yasmin and Stu story or scenes come on the screen, you're just like, and just waiting for it to be over. It's sad, but you can't win. I just
still find it hilarious that Mason ran Eliza over and no one cares about it. Not even Eliza really cared.
Yeah, I think that was the time when she'd discovered that Stu had been having secret meetings with Dad. I can't remember exactly, but she was really mad at Stu for something. Runs into the road, and yeah, Mason's he's in Tyrone's car, isn't he? Yeah. Knocks into her. And he's like laughing. That was never brought up, even though Mason was under Stu's wing. You'd have thought that would have maybe come out, wouldn't it? But it doesn't really gel with the whole Mason's rehabilitated vibe that they're going for at the moment.
I don't really get why we're on the Mason is a goodie train.
Yeah.
On the show.
He's still got skeletons in that cupboard. It's a bit like
with Gary and Max. Like, they've done some terrible, really unforgivable things.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, you're not paying attention to what we're telling you now. You've got to, they're goodies now. Yeah. Stop being awkward.
Well, anyway, that's it. That is Stu. If we've kind of missed anything, or if you want to be staunch Stu defenders, do send us an email, write us comments if you listen to this on YouTube or whatever, and let us know. What's your favourite Stu scene? Does anybody have a favourite Stu scene? Does anyone remember? And he's one of these characters that I just don't think has got any super memorable scenes. He's got no clip show moments, has he?
Don't think so.
It's sad.
It's sad. The initial thing between him and Kelly was
that was lovely,
really nice.
Yeah,
and like the backstory of the murder, that's intriguing, and then I think it went off the rails after that.
It did. But we won't rag on him any longer. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope this was a pleasant trip down memory lane for you. And now you can go back to never thinking about Stu again. So with that, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.